Either get a job or get out. I'm sick of supporting a woman like you." My husband's words cut deep, triggering something inside me that snapped. Why should I endure the condescension of a man who belittles others to elevate his own sense of superiority? I'm better off without someone like him. My name is Melissa. I'm 36 and I juggle work with homemaking as a freelance illustrator. I've always been passionate about art and pursued it through college. After graduating, I worked at a design firm, but when I turned 30, I decided to go independent. I wanted to express myself creatively on my own terms. At that time, I was single and excited about living life my way. Then I met my husband, Daniel, through a mutual friend. We hit it off and decided to marry, registering our union a year later. Daniel's job as a salesman required him to travel extensively, which meant he worked long hours. He asked me to become a housewife, so I put my illustration career on hold. I was happy to manage the home while he was away, believing that we should support each other as a married couple. I thought I could return to my art career later and continue my studies in the meantime. We trusted each other and had no major complaints. However, life threw us a curveball when Daniel got promoted to head a new sales office. This promotion meant he wouldn't be transferred for a while, and we could finally settle down in one place. We were both excited about the prospect of stability after constantly moving and adapting to new cities. But the transition wasn't as smooth as I had hoped. Daniel was still overwhelmed with work, managing the new office and launching additional branches. On top of that, the cost of living in our new city was significantly higher than we anticipated. While Daniel's salary could cover our basic expenses, it left us living paycheck to paycheck, with no company housing assistance to fall back on. We wanted to save for the future, but his salary barely covered our current needs. I considered tapping into our savings for security, but it didn't feel like a stable solution. I asked my husband if it would be okay for me to work, as long as I managed the house well. He seemed unsure but eventually agreed, though he emphasized that I needed to keep up with the household chores. His response felt a bit off, but I figured he was just adjusting to the changes. I was excited to start my new job after all these years. However, things began to change for the worse. My husband started criticizing the meals I prepared, which he never did before. He complained about the food being subpar and even accused me of cutting corners, which felt unfair. When I explained that I found deals on ingredients to save money, he snapped, accusing me of implying his salary was too low. I was shocked by his reaction and struggled to understand why he was twisting my words. He yelled at me, saying I was ruining things by working instead of focusing on housework. I wanted to argue back but decided against it, thinking he must be stressed from his new responsibilities. I apologized, hoping he was just tired and would calm down. Despite my efforts, his attitude worsened. He started nitpicking everything, demanding that I handle chores to his exacting standards, and even questioned where his clothes were or whether I had shined his shoes. He seemed like a different person, constantly yelling and becoming more critical. Balancing housework and my job proved harder than I expected. I tried to work around the chores, but my husband's high standards meant that housework took up most of my time. When I suggested he help with the chores, he retorted that my job was worthless and that I should quit. He began to belittle me as just a housewife, using it as an insult. His constant criticism and refusal to help made everything feel overwhelming, and my distrust in him grew. Even though I was working, I was still treated like a housewife. I didn't understand his logic. My pay was low, but that was because he kept interrupting me, making it hard to get more work done. Frustrated, I decided to focus more on my job and do fewer chores. One day, while cleaning, I found his old pay stubs on his desk. Out of curiosity, I looked at them and was shocked to see that his salary was about half of what I had been told. I wondered where the extra money was coming from. He had supposedly gotten a promotion, so why was his salary lower? I couldn't find any old pay stubs from before the promotion, and I felt certain something was wrong. Then, my husband's uncle called. He said he had lent my husband a lot of money and was wondering when he would be paid back. It dawned on me that my husband had been covering the salary gap with loans from his uncle. I was devastated. I apologized to his uncle and promised to pay him back. Even though I felt awful, the uncle was kind and said to repay him when we could. That night, I didn't mention the debts or the pay stubs to my husband, but my frustration with him grew. He continued to belittle me, criticize my cooking and cleaning, and interfere with my work. When I tried to stand up for myself, he slammed his fist on the table and insulted me, saying I was wasting money and questioning who was providing for us. I was done with his behavior. I told him that I was doing my part and that his words were contradictory. I didn't want to put up with his insults anymore. He said I should start earning money if I wanted to complain, and I thought he should do the same. I stayed silent as he continued to insult me, saying I was a burden and that I should leave if I wasn't going to work. His triumphant look as he said these things sent a shiver down my spine. He probably thought I'd apologize, but I was ready to leave. I grabbed my packed bags and started to walk out. You can't do anything on your own anyway, he said. I gave him a cold look and said, I'm leaving this behind. I slapped the divorce papers I'd gotten from the city hall onto the table. He looked stunned and didn't know how to react. I told him, make sure you fill these out and send them soon, then left for my parents' house. I had already told them what was happening, and they welcomed me with open arms. My parents were upset about his attitude, the low income, and the debt. They strongly advised me to get a divorce, which I intended to do. My dad offered to help me find a lawyer if I had trouble with the divorce process. I thanked him for his support, hoping to end the marriage quickly. A week later, my husband showed up at my parents' house. Did you fill out the divorce papers? I asked. He looked nervous and said, I'm sorry, please reconsider the divorce. I was surprised by his sudden change in attitude. Although my parents were skeptical, they agreed to let him in to talk. It turned out that his promotion was a lie. He had actually been demoted to a less important job and his salary had dropped as a result. He wasn't good at his job and had been shuffled around due to poor performance. Now, he was stuck in a low-ranking position with little chance for advancement. His pride had kept him from telling me the truth, so he had pretended to be successful to boost his ego. At home, he had taken out his frustrations on me, trying to maintain a sense of superiority. When I left, I had left a copy of my bank statement behind. Even though I earned less than he did, it was still enough to support us. He admitted that he needed me and couldn't afford the rent on his own. He asked if we could try again, promising to change and not make me suffer anymore. I was unmoved and indifferent to his tears. I simply brushed him off. If you can't afford the rent, then just move. You can find cheaper places if you're on your own. And what about the debt to your uncle? You need to pay that back, right? When I said this, his eyes widened. He was still trying to hide the debt and start fresh. It's hard to reason with some people. I understand that he was borrowing money to get by, but if we're talking about starting over, he should have been honest about everything. My dad added, You've been so dishonest. I can't imagine letting you have custody of our daughter now. What were you planning to do about the debt without telling her? My husband didn't respond to my dad's comment. I kept pressing the issue, saying, If you won't agree to the divorce, I'll hire a lawyer. Your abusive behavior is grounds for divorce, and I have evidence. He seemed to give up and took the divorce papers out of his bag. I've really messed up beyond repair. It's too late now. We're strangers, he said. I took the papers and we split the small amount of savings we had. We moved out of our apartment, and I heard he quit his job. Apparently, news of our divorce made his already difficult work situation even worse. He said he was paying back his uncle slowly and working part-time. After the divorce, he reached out several times, asking to reconcile and saying he realized I was the only one who had been on his side. His constant pleas made me uncomfortable, so I changed my phone number. If he had set aside his pride and been honest, maybe things could have been different. But I couldn't forgive his abusive behavior, and the love had faded long ago. I walked away and focused on my career as an illustrator. I'm busy, but every day feels fulfilling. I looked out the window from my computer, thinking about how that moment of courage had changed my life. I'm living my one and only life to the fullest, with no regrets.